As a TV producer by trade, I'm a big fan of a good story arc. So, we've talked about NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Sumed mentioned the need for speed, need for efficiency. He asked the question, what are you doing for proactive risk management? And towards the tail end there, artificial intelligence. We're going to lean into that nexus now, this nexus between AI and cybersecurity. As you know, AI is already transforming federal agencies and how they detect threats, respond to incidents, manage cyber risk. But integrating these tools in a way that's both responsible and secure is a challenge we're all still figuring out. I'm looking forward to exploring that topic with Kat Megas. She is Program Manager for Cybersecurity, Privacy, and AI at NIST. Let's give her a round of applause, folks. So, Kat, welcome. Maybe right off the top, NIST is a big organization. You have a lot of elements there in your title. Give us a sense of your job, your day-to-day, what goes into all of that work, ma'am.
Sure. So working on the what I like to call the intersection of AI and cybersecurity is not new at NIST. Before we stood up the program, there's lots of work that preceded. And when I talk about the intersection of AI and cybersecurity, my charter is to focus on not only the use of AI in cybersecurity, but also to look at how do we secure cybersecurity. So my day-to-day job is coordinating across the different efforts. One of the things I was chartered with as well was kind of looking at not only what are we working on, but understanding where are there areas we should be engaged in that we are not currently engaged in. So some of the more recent efforts that I'm leading is working on what we call a cyber AI profile. And what we've proposed and what we've held a workshop on and have heard feedback on is that it would be helpful to the community to see a profile for AI based on the cybersecurity framework.
I mentioned deployed securely and deployed ethically in my introduction of you, and I want to dig in eventually into some of that great work that you mentioned, but big picture, Kat, give us some best practices for agencies doing just that, deploying securely, deploying ethically.
As far as
artificial intelligence,
AI?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I would say look towards NIST guidance. One of the things we heard when we engaged early with the community was lots of good cybersecurity practices still apply to AI. We are working now to kind of peel that apart and understand kind of the specific areas. There's NIST guidance out there. Recently, there was a version 2 of an AI/ML taxonomy of adversarial AI that was released. And what it does is it walks through a taxonomy, identifies the different types of attacks on AI and on AI systems, and offers some mitigations. When it kind of comes to thinking about the trustworthiness of AI, not to delve into sort of ethical considerations, there is the NIST AI risk management framework. And what the way I look at the NIST AI risk management framework is as you are looking at adopting AI and you want to understand what are the potential risks, the AI RMF provides a great framework for how you can think about the different aspects of risk, and then provides kind of a four-prong function approach to how do you then manage those risks over time.
You mentioned profiles. I'll call you and your colleague over at NIST, Vicki Pilateri, the kind of dynamic duo of this space. She's speaking later in today's agenda, by the way. But in April, you published a blog on that exact topic, the creation of these community profiles. What are community profiles in this nexus of AI and cyber?
Yeah. So first, kind of the the lingo or the lexicon of profiles. Mainly when NIST uses that, we refer to things like the Cybersecurity Framework profile. If you're not familiar with the Cybersecurity Framework, it's just that. It's a framework of cybersecurity outcomes. It provides a framing of all the cybersecurity outcomes that we believe an organization should strive to be meeting. What a community profile does is it brings together the community and through a consensus process identifies which one of those cybersecurity outcomes does everybody agree are the highest priority for that community. And what it can also do is it then provides the context of any sort of legislative requirements or regulatory requirements that community may also have. And so what a community profile does is it provides you kind of with an understanding of where your peers are and what your peers all think are important. It allows you as an individual organization then to use the cybersecurity framework, maybe come up with your own assessment of where you are, and then you can look to this community profile to say, well, one, this is where I am as compared to like where my peers in my community all think we should be. If you want to develop a target profile to say, I want to be able to communicate to my leadership, to my stakeholders, this is where I want to be. The community profile provides you with a starting point for that. And it also provides you a way to put together a roadmap, understanding again, here's my assessment of where I am, here's where I should be. All right, and here's over the next couple of years how I see myself graduating and closing the gap from where I am. When we talk about, when you mentioned Vicky, what I like to say is kind of that's kind of the OG RMF space. For those of you who are, delved in FISMA, I think you know what I mean by the OG RMF. So in that area, and that might be the blog you're referring to, we talk a lot about overlays in the kind of RMF space. And for those of you, again, in the federal agency space, what overlays do is they do a very similar thing to a profile, but you're looking at 800-53, you're looking at the controls for 800-53, and you're putting those into the context of whatever is the use case that you're looking at.
I'm not a coder by trade like Sumed or a queen of the hackers like Rachel. I mean, I was an English major in college, but
that's okay. I was in marketing.
Hey, there we go. That blog post was an easy read for anyone who wants to take a look. It only took me about 5 minutes, but I wrote down one phrase on there, Kat. It said, not every organization will be developing AI. Many will be just users. What does that mean, and how does it impact like the profile creation process?
Right. So when I was communicating that in the blog, I was thinking, and part of this is because of my history. So prior to kind of leading the cyber privacy and AI work, I was focused on the NIST IoT cybersecurity program. And on the IoT side, what we quickly discovered is there is a shared cybersecurity responsibility between those who are building the products and those who are actually developing and using the product. So with that sort of comment, I was trying to kind of, again, tease out, at NIST we have the SSDF, which is the Secure Software Development Framework. A profile again, the word profile, has already been developed of the SSDF for generative AI and dual-use foundational models. That is really focused on the primary audience of that are the individuals or the organizations that are building AI capabilities. The CSF is really targeted at organizations that are adopting and using those technologies. So what I think I was trying to tease out with that sentence was, while the SSDF provides good guidance for those building those models, there's information that can be gleaned from organizations that are using those models who may want to understand what the organizations followed when they built them. At the same time, as you adopt technology, there are things you are going to want to do to securely adopt those technologies.
You mentioned the control overlays, and I want to really dig into that because I think this audience will get a lot out of it. In case you're taking notes, I'm going to read these off so you can do your own background reading, but I'll do this part slowly just for the audience's benefit. Kat, you mentioned SP 800-53 already. Two others, SP 800-218A, Alpha, and then AI, Artificial Intelligence, -100-2E 2025. Like broadly, what's the difference between those three, and how do you hope that this really engaged audience uses them as you look to build out this control overlay process going forward?
Well, I would say out of those different documents, if you already work in federal agencies, you're probably familiar with 800-53. Hopefully, you are already thinking about adopting and using 853, which is a catalog of security controls. The overlay concept is kind of something that we're just kind of newly teasing out, and we're trying to gauge interest in it. The blog that was recently published between Vicki and myself was exactly that, to put out sort of feelers into our key stakeholders and understand, would it be useful for NIST to develop these overlays for kind of common use cases across the US federal government. That doesn't preclude federal agencies from creating their own overlays at the moment. What we're trying to tease out, would it be useful for NIST to try and put those together generally for the community? So you can be using 800-53 to secure your AI systems today. 218-A, again, I just mentioned kind of is the secure software development framework profile. Again, if you are the consumer of an AI product, you may want to understand kind of what secure software development processes the developer of that solution used. So you could use 800-218 for that purpose. And the last one, which is the AI taxonomy that I kind of threw out there as well, if you are aware within your agency that you are already using and deploying AI systems, which I assume many of you are, what the AI taxonomy can help you do is understand what are the different types of threats and risks associated with those AI systems, and what are some of the mitigations you can apply.
Do you feel to that secure software development process, 218A, that needle is moving, that the exchange of information is more transparent than it ever has before on the building side, maybe between government and industry or between agency to agency? Is that type of information sharing evolving?
I have little insights into that side of it. As you know, NIST doesn't really get involved or have any role in oversight or the operations of federal agencies. I do think that NIST, as you know, operates very transparently, very openly. Most of our publications, most of our research are done very collaboratively with both the community as well as many times the vendors. So I think that's one step in kind of opening up and helping some of that transparency. I do have to say, transparency was one of the key takeaways. We held a workshop on the cyber AI profile, and we had a large group of stakeholders, and during the breakout sessions, we'll be publishing, hopefully, the summary of that entire workshop in the next couple of weeks. But one of the key takeaways we heard, even from cyber professionals, was that the one thing holding them back from even just adopting AI in cybersecurity was that need for transparency and that need to kind of understand how is that model trained, what is the supply chain, what are the different components. So transparency has been identified kind of as a key area. And there are different approaches that I know that are being discussed. Many of you have probably already heard one word that's picking up traction is kind of the idea of AI SBOMs. So again, I think hopefully the cyber AI profile, as we work on it over the next couple of months, is going to identify the importance of this, And then I think in the NCCOE, if you're not familiar, it's the National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence. It is part of NIST. It's an FFRDC focused on cybersecurity solutions, where we partner with both the community of interest, who identifies a key area or a key cybersecurity challenge, and then we partner as well with vendors that can provide part of the solution towards that community's sort of challenge. We build out demonstration projects in the NCCOE, and then we publish guidelines for the community to pick up. Those are freely available, that kind of provide your A to Z solution as to how you would actually address the cybersecurity solution using these different solutions and how you would configure them. So I think there's lots of pieces and parts to how we can enable more transparency in the market.
SBOM is just one of my favorite phrases, like rock and
Alan
roll
Freed would
track
love
to
to
the
hear that.
background. You know, Sumed used rock in the cloud earlier. I think that has a certain ring to it as well. I know I'm paraphrasing here, but you've separated these cyber AI profiles, I'll call them, into 3 buckets. And if I've taken any of this out of context, just reach over and please correct me. Give me a karate chop. But folks not using artificial intelligence at all, using machine learning in some form or fashion, using more robust AI capabilities. Could you talk a bit about that second one, using machine learning? Are people often surprised that they're using it now or they've been using it for years? Does that surprise them?
Yeah. So not sure about the buckets, but I would say that was one of my key takeaways. So when I was given this kind of new hat, one of the first things I did is I started engaging with what I call kind of the CISO community, and started kind of talking to them about, what's their focus, what are their concerns, the traditional kind of what's keeping them up at night. Many of them were talking about how they really haven't adopted any sort of AI yet because they were really kind of unclear about some of the implications. At the same time, I also engaged with kind of the community that builds the solutions. And one of the first things they all said is, Kat, this is not new. I know everybody now is kind of talking about AI, but we've been using ML in our solutions for the last decade. This is not new. It's just now all of a sudden it's become a buzzword. So I would say if you think you're not using some sort of, if you consider ML kind of in the bucket of AI sort of models, this is kind of a wake-up call. You should go back perhaps and revisit what are some of the cybersecurity solutions that you're already using, and you probably already are using some sort of ML.
I think I know the answer to this question already, but I'm going to ask it anyway. No matter what bucket those folks fall into, Meg, do they have to do some type of risk management, risk mitigation? And maybe does it vary based on how advanced their usage is?
I don't know. There were a lot of questions in that one question. So let me tease perhaps one of them apart. Is there any sort of risk management they should be doing? Of course. Just like with any sort of solution, when you adopt it, there is some risk management that you should be doing. And again, not to kind of lean on the NIST guidelines, right? Frameworks don't give you necessarily a prescriptive way to address this issue, but things like the AI RMF can help you understand if you are adopting AI and you are using AI in your solutions, what are the different risks potentially associated with those? And some of those that I hear teased out in some of the solutions or in some of the discussions that I've had with stakeholders are, I'm concerned about explainability. I am concerned about my team's ability to kind of explain and understand decisions that are being made, flags that are being thrown, and kind of as the amount of data is going to exponentially increase that these systems are able to ingest and are able to process, the more that I'm concerned that my staff, who are the person who is actually ultimately making the decision may not really be understanding some of the prompts that they're receiving or some of the alerts that they're receiving and why things were flagged the way they were flagged. So I've been hearing concerns around explainability. I've been hearing concerns around transparency, which is one of the areas you mentioned. Privacy is an area that I've heard from the community and stakeholders that was raised during our workshop. As organizations are adopting these solutions, they want to understand better kind of what are the privacy concerns. And then once you've identified the risk, there are lots of tools, not only the AI risk management framework, but then there's other tools that can actually help you understand then and tease apart how do I manage those risks over time.
You mentioned data. What steps should organizations be taking right now relative to their data in order to meet the need that we outlined at the beginning of this session, make it more secure, make it more seamless for those organizations?
So we like to say one of the key takeaways, both we released a concept paper early on the cyber AI profile and put it out for comments, as well as the workshop. And one of the big takeaways was data is the crown jewel. So I think there is definitely an understanding and a consensus that data is the crown jewel. As we've been working through the CSF profile, one of the areas that we're trying to highlight for individuals or for organizations is now that you have a recognition that you are adopting AI, this might be an opportunity to go back and look at your data inventory and understand where is my data. What data am I using? Do I have to revisit the relative prioritization of that data in my organization? You may want to think about kind of data lifecycle. You may want to think about, again, where did the training data come from? Was that training outsourced to a third party? There are supply chain considerations. And then if you follow the data lifecycle as well, you may also want to understand what happens to your data as it is generated coming out of those AI systems as well. That was an area that was highlighted for us in the comments as well. When you're thinking about securing AI systems, don't only think about the data you have and the data that's kind of an input. You need to also be thinking about how do we secure and think about the data that's the output from these systems. So again, if you're an agency or if you're an organization, you probably want to be thinking about where is my data going and where is it being used.
Where folks are going, one thing that you mentioned before we came up on stage is an exciting new area you're exploring, and that's past FISMA compliance and possibly applying artificial intelligence to enable that process. Could you talk at least initially about what you're looking at there and maybe what it could become?
Yeah. So I think this is kind of when you think about the use of AI in cyber, I think a lot of us automatically think to the idea of kind of how can we use artificial intelligence within an existing tool. And I think kind of an additional spin on that is starting to look at, all right, well, we have this process that lots of agencies or organizations have to follow, all the way looking at security early in kind of the system life cycle, all the way through to from cradle to grave. How can we look at using artificial intelligence to maybe automate those different steps or augment some of those steps to actually make it faster, whether it be identification of risks, whether it be generating all the different sorts of documents that have to go along with that, all the way to the end, whether it be looking at your compliance and other requirements. So I think NIST is trying to also take a broad use of how can we use AI kind of to make the entire process more simple.
As we come to a close here, tell this audience what you need from them. I mean, participation is clearly really important in this process. If there was a call to action at the end of this discussion, Meg, what would it be? What would the 2 or 3 call to actions be?
I'm glad you said 2 to 3, because there's more than one. One is please sign up for the community of interest as we're developing the what we call the Cyber AI Profile, which is a cybersecurity framework profile for AI. We've already had the workshop. The plan going forward, though, is to hold community of interest meetings. Hopefully, we can hold those every couple of weeks, monthly. And as we are working through the CSF profile for AI, one of the feedback we received is, please don't do your NIST thing where we attend a workshop, we have lots of conversations, and then you guys disappear for months, and then you release an initial public draft and ask us for comments. What we're hoping to do is have these community of interest meetings at regular intervals, kind of previewing and socializing content as we're able to develop it and invite feedback from the community, flushing out things such as the community priorities that we talked about. So please sign up for the community of interest for that. You can locate that on the NCCOE website if you look for the Cyber AI Profile. The second thing is, you mentioned the blog. Thank you. At the bottom of the blog, if you are interested and you think there's value in NIST looking at creating overlays for AI, one thing we're looking at is making those practical and being use case specific. So we need to hear from the community because hearing from the community is a real driver for our work. We only want to work on things that are useful for the community. So please do let us know. We're interested in hearing from people. Would this be helpful? Which are the use cases we should focus on initially? We obviously can't do them all, so what are the most important ones and which ones should be first? So I would say that's the second, and then the third one, again, kind of to focus back on the NCCOE. We have a broad range of AI-related use cases that we are working on in the NCCOE. Everything from Dioptra, which is a test platform. It's a test platform that if you are the developer of an AI model or if you're an organization that's using one, you can download this test platform and it kind of gives you a way to kind of test that or assess that model. We're working on a technology in the NCCOE. It's called a privacy enhancing technology. And the use case we're looking at it, we're using genomic data as the use case, but that doesn't mean PETS isn't broadly available. But we're looking at federated learning and how can you use federated learning over data that has been run through a privacy enhancing technology or a PET. And I like to say that's not only for those who are privacy minded, but for those who are also concerned about loss of business confidential or proprietary information, which are kind of a different bucket, I would say, of concerns around data leakage than privacy-related data, which is about individuals. You can still look at PETs as a way to potentially protect that information and still effectively use things like machine learning on top of that data. So engage in the NCCOE, look at what projects are out there that might be of interest to you. All of those projects have community of interest that you can then join, and you can either track it and you can follow the output, make use of the output, or you can actually be part of the community of interest and contribute to the development of those. So there you go.
Kat Magus, Program Manager for Cybersecurity, Privacy, and Artificial Intelligence. Don't go anywhere, but before we do, let's give her a round of applause, folks.